In the course of time, David inquired of the Lord, "Shall I go up to one of the towns of Judah?" he asked. The Lord said, "Go up." David asked, "Where shall I go?" "To Hebron," the Lord answered. Now remember, they're not actually having a conversation. Okay? David is not speaking face to face with the Lord and getting direct answers to his open questions. He is probably still consulting the Urim and the Thummim here. And this conversation is simply being recounted this way to give us the gist of the information that David acquired when he inquired of the Lord. Now in our English Bibles, it's written like a conversation. You have commas, you have quotation marks, you have periods, you have indentations and line breaks and all that. But in the original text, it wouldn't have been written that way. And even the original text would have been a summary of this conversation, which isn't really a face-to-face dialogue conversation. That's just something you need to remember. So David went up there with his two wives, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. David also took the men who were with him, each of his family, and they settled in Hebron and its towns. Then the men of Judah came to Hebron, and there they anointed David king over the house of Judah. Now David's town had been Ziklag, and it's in rubble, it's in ruins. I don't know how long he stayed there after 2 Samuel 2. He went back to Ziklag after rescuing his wives, and it was rubble. And then he found out about the mess. 3 days later, he got the message about what happened to Saul in the battle of Israel. And it says in the course of time, I don't know how much longer, a day, a week, a month, a year, I'm not sure. I would think it would have been pretty quickly, like after he was done mourning, because, I mean, why would he live in a village that's been burned and destroyed, you know? When David was told that it was the men of Jabesh-Gilead who had buried Saul, he sent messengers to the men of Jabesh-Gilead to say to them, "The Lord bless you for showing this kindness to Saul your master by burying him. May the Lord now show you kindness and faithfulness, and I too will show you the same favor because you have done this. Now then, be strong and brave, for Saul your master is dead, and the house of Judah has anointed me king over them." Now Jabesh-Gilead is across the Jordan River, so it's in that area of Israel that's not part of the actual promised land. So David has become king over the south, but he needs to extend his influence north, and one of the ways he's going to do it is to curry favor with the men across the river in Jabesh-Gilead in the land of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh across the Jordan River. Meanwhile, however, he needs to do this because he needs allies, because the survivors of Saul's dynasty are not going to give up the kingship without a fight. Meanwhile, Abner, son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had taken Ishbosheth, son of Saul, the last remaining one apparently, and brought him over to Mahanaim. He made him king over Gilead, Asher, and Jezreel, and also over Ephraim, Benjamin, and all Israel. So Ishbosheth, son of Saul, this is our second, king of all of Israel. David is king of Judah at this point. Ishbosheth, son of Saul, was 40 years old when he became king over Israel, and he reigned 2 years. That's our first real appearance of what will be the standard regnal formula for counting and measuring the years of a king. We read about Saul's data in 1 Samuel 13, but in that case, that was the very first time, because he was the very first king. But in that case, the formula wasn't finalized yet, and it reads a little differently than all the formulas that are to come. It says, the way it's written in our English, this NIV translation here, it says Saul was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned over Israel 42 years. That's actually not accurate. It basically means Saul had a year when he became king, and he reigned over Israel 2 years. There's a problem with that. We were talking about that when we covered it. But part of the issue with that verse is that it's the very first time we see the standard kingly formula used to measure a king's reign. And it does not fit the same pattern as every other appearance of that formula afterwards. As I said at the time, my guess is that part of this is because, when that was first written down, there was no standard formula, as there would be later on. So whoever first wrote about Saul's reign, Samuel, or whoever it was, wasn't following a formula that every other writer for every other king that came after him would follow. So it doesn't follow quite the same rules as this one does and every other one after this does. The house of Judah, however, followed David. The length of time David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah was 7 years and 6 months. Abner, son of Ner, together with the men of Ishbosheth, son of Saul, left Mahanaim and went to Gibeon. Joab, son of Zeruiah, and David's men, that's Joab, that's David's nephew, going to be one of his top guy, not just one of them, his top guy. Joab, son of Zeruiah, and David's men went out and met them at the pool of Gibeon. One group sat down on one side of the pool, and the other group sat on the other side. Then Abner said to Joab, "Let us have some of the young men get up and fight hand to hand in front of us." "All right, let them do it," Joab said. So they stood up and were counted off. 12 men for Benjamin and Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and 12 for David. I'm assuming this is some sort of representative combat, similar to what we saw with David and Goliath back earlier when David first appeared in the scene. That representatives of each side are going to fight each other, and then the loser, whichever side loses in that representative fight is supposed to submit to the winning side. It seems like it. It doesn't really say that's the point, but it doesn't end up happening that way. But it's like it. Then again, the Philistines didn't submit to the Israelites when the Goliath died; they had to fight them off. So I don't know. Representative combat it ended up becoming that way, where the losing side ended up fighting anyway. I don't know, but it seems like that's what they're suggesting here. They don't actually go out and say that. Then each man grabbed his opponent by the head and thrust his dagger into his opponent's side, and they fell down together. So that place in Gibeon was called Helkath Hazarim, which means field of daggers or field of hostilities. I don't know what that means. Was that some sort of arranged suicide pact? Did they all just happen to have the same idea at the same time? And I don't know. I mean, I can't figure that out. That is something that is, I will admit, beyond my ability to comprehend that particular verse. The battle that day was very fierce, and Abner and the men of Israel were defeated by David's men. The 3 sons of Zeruiah were there: Joab, Abishai, and Asahel. These are all David's nephews. Now Asahel was as fleet-footed as a wild gazelle. He was a fast runner. He chased Abner, turning neither to the right nor to the left as he pursued him. So the men of Israel were defeated. So Abner is fleeing, and he's being chased by Asahel. Abner looked behind him and asked, "Is that you, Asahel?" "It is," he answered. Then Abner said to him, "Turn aside to the right or to the left. Take on one of the young men and strip him of his weapons." But Asahel would not stop chasing him. Again Abner warned Asahel, "Stop chasing me! Why should I strike you down? How could I look your brother Joab in the face?" So Abner was probably a better fighter than Asahel, but Asahel was a faster runner than Abner. But Abner has no doubt that if Asahel catches up to him, Abner will kill him. He doesn't want to do that. So he's telling Asahel to stop chasing him, and Asahel is not going to stop chasing him. But Asahel refused to give up the pursuit. So Abner thrust the butt of his spear into Asahel's stomach, and the spear came out through his back. He fell there and died on the spot. I get the impression that he took the spear and rammed it backwards. I'm not really clear exactly what that means, but I get the impression that as Asahel is catching up, Abner takes his spear and thrusts it behind him backwards. So Asahel fell there and died on the spot, and every man stopped when he came to the place where Asahel had fallen and died. But Joab and Abishai, and also his brothers, pursued Abner, and as the sun was setting, they came to the hill of Ammah, near Giah, on the way to the wasteland of Gibeon. Then the men of Benjamin rallied behind Abner. They formed themselves into a group and took their stand on top of a hill. Abner called out to Joab, "Must the sword devour forever? Don't you realize that this will end in bitterness? How long before you order your men to stop pursuing their brothers?" Joab answered, "As surely as God lives, if you had not spoken, the men would have continued the pursuit of their brothers until morning." So now that he has spoken, they're going to call it off. So Joab blew the trumpet, and all the men came to a halt. They no longer pursued Israel, nor did they fight anymore. All that night, Abner and his men marched through the Arabah. They crossed the Jordan, continued through the whole Bithron, which means morning or ravine. Either morning or ravine. The meaning of the Hebrew for this word is uncertain. And came to Mahanaim. Then Joab returned from pursuing Abner and assembled all his men. Besides Asahel, 19 of David's men were found missing. But David's men had killed 360 Benjamites who were with Abner. They took Asahel and buried him in his father's tomb at Bethlehem. Then Joab and his men marched all night and arrived at Hebron by daybreak. Now let's continue. The war between the house of Saul and the house of David lasted a long time. David grew stronger and stronger, while the house of Saul grew weaker and weaker. Sons were born to David in Hebron. So David is in Hebron for 7 years and 6 months. And during this time, he has these number of sons. His firstborn was Amnon, the son of Ahinoam of Jezreel. Remember? He has 2 wives. When he came to Hebron, he had 2 wives. He had 3, technically. Michal was still out there somewhere. But he had 2 that were with him. He's going to get more. Okay, he's not going to be content with just 2. His firstborn was Amnon, the son of Ahinoam of Jezreel. His second, Eliab, the son of Abigail, the widow of Nabal of Carmel. The third, now that son probably died in childbirth or an early age, because we never hear about him again. He doesn't factor into the story in any way, shape, or form later on, so he probably didn't make it out of childhood. The third, Absalom, the son of Maacah, daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. So David is making political marriages here with princesses of foreign kingdoms now. I mean, his very first marriage was political. It was to Michal, daughter of Saul. So he's already an old hand at this. And even his marriage to Abigail was political, because now he has access to Nabal's estate. By marrying Abigail, he gets access to her late husband's stuff. So, and I don't know about Ahinoam or any of that, but David is not random in his choice of wives. The third son was Absalom, the son of Maacah, daughter of Talmai, king of Geshur. The fourth, Adonijah, the son of Haggith. Now, Amnon, Absalom, and Adonijah are all going to be very important to the story later on. The son of Abigail, Eliab, is not. The fifth, Shephatiah, the son of Abital, whoever that is. And the sixth, Ephraim, the son of David's wife, Eglah. So he has a different son with a different woman. Each of these sons is being born to him by a different woman. These were born to David in Hebron. And these sons are going to fight each other. Again, I mentioned the 3 main ones here of this list. And they're going to fight each other. And they're going to be responsible for each other's deaths. Well, Adonijah will be dead later, but it's good. Having all these women and having all these sons with different women does not lead to a peaceful family life, a peaceful household. There's going to be incredible tension throughout David's household, which is actually going to be the story of his reign as king in his dark days. During the war between the house of Saul and the house of David, Abner had been strengthening his own position in the house of Saul. Maybe he was doing it because he wanted to be king, or it just kind of happened. Maybe he had a more dominant personality than Ishbosheth. I'm not sure. At any rate, Abner is becoming the chief figure in the house of Saul. Now Saul had a concubine named Rizpah, daughter of Ai, or Aya, or whatever. And Ishbosheth said to Abner, "Why did you sleep with my father's concubine?" I don't know if he did or not, but Ishbosheth is accusing him of it. Abner was very angry because of what Ishbosheth said, and he answered, "Am I a dog's head on Judah's side? This very day I am loyal to the house of your father Saul, and to his family and friends. I haven't handed you over to David. Yet now you accuse me of an offense involving this woman." Now, I don't know if he was innocent of it or not. I have no idea. The text doesn't say one way or another. But Ishbosheth accused him of it, and Abner was upset about that. Maybe he was justifiably upset because he was innocent, or maybe he's just making a pretense of being upset even though he actually had done it. I don't know. The text doesn't say. "May God deal with Abner, be it ever so severely, if I do not do for David what the Lord promised him on oath, and transfer the kingdom from the house of Saul, and establish David's throne over Israel and Judah from Dan to Beersheba," that's from north to south. Ishbosheth did not dare to say another word to Abner, because he was afraid of him. Now, we read back before, in David 2, verse 8, that the whole reason why Ishbosheth was set up as king was because of Abner. So Abner was pretty clearly the dominant personality in this, government. Okay? I don't know if Ishbosheth was a weak king or a weak man or a weak personality or what, but clearly Abner was the dominant force. And Abner apparently realizes that his days are numbered. He's not going to win this fight. He's gaining more and more power in the house of Saul, but Abner can see the writing on the wall that he's not going to win this struggle against David long term. So he may be looking for a way out. This whole thing here may just be an excuse that he's taking advantage of to get out of what he now believes is a losing proposition. Then Abner sent messengers on his behalf to say to David, "Whose land is it? Make an agreement with it's David's land." I mean, David has been appointed king over God's land. "Make an agreement with me, and I will help bring all Israel over to you." "Good," said David. "I will make an agreement with you. But I demand one thing of you. Do not come into my presence unless you bring Michal, daughter of Saul, when you come to see me." Remember, Michal was actually David's first wife. Then David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, son of Saul, demanding, "Give me my wife Michal, whom I betrothed to myself, for the price of 100 Philistine foreskins." Now, once upon a time, David was very reluctant to take the daughter of Saul in marriage as a wife, even though he was promised that as a reward for defeating Goliath. And now he's demanding her back. David is not acting like a humble, I'm second in command. Like I'm no good. I'm not the level of the king. And now he's saying, "I want my wife back. Give me back my wife. Don't even try talking to me about settling terms of peace if I don't get my wife back." So Ishbosheth gave orders and had her taken away from her husband Paltiel, son of Laish. Her husband, however, went with her, weeping behind her all the way to Baharam. Then Abner said to him, "Go back home!" So he went back. So this man liked Michal. Okay, Michal and Paltiel apparently had developed a fondness for each other during the years they were together. Michal has given, as we'll see later, Michal has given up her youthful infatuation with David, and apparently had settled into a happy home life with Paltiel, and that's being disrupted now, so that she's sent back to David. And I don't think the husband, clearly is not happy about this, and I don't think Michal is either, as we'll find out later. Abner conferred with the elders of Israel and said, "For some time you have wanted to make David your king. Now, do it. For the Lord promised David, 'Be my servant, by my servant David, I will rescue my people Israel from the hand of the Philistines and from the hand of all their enemies. Abner also spoke to the Benjamites in person. Those are Saul's men. Those are his own tribe. So they're going to be the hardest ones to convince. Then he went to Hebron to tell David everything that Israel and the whole house of Benjamin wanted to do. When Abner, who had 20 men with him, came to David at Hebron, David prepared a feast for him and his men. Then Abner said to David, "Let me go at once and assemble all Israel for my lord the king, so they may make a compact with you, and that you may rule over all that your heart desires." So David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. So the civil war is being brought to an end. Abner has accepted that he is not going to win this fight, and he is angling for conditions of peace. And David is willing to do that, as long as he gets his wife back, which they gave her back. They gave her back to him, and so now David is ready to establish peace with his fellow Israelites.